damn, these games are just, they're so good. Like, seriously, when Platinum goes hard, they really are one of the best in the business, and just, what a reminder this is. So, yeah, Bayonetta 1 and 2 recently released on the Switch, bringing our favorite head witch in charge to the platform. To no one's surprise, these games are still amazing. Bayonetta 1 specifically kind of surprised me because, you know, I played this game on the 360 when it first came out, and I didn't really mess with it too much on the Wii U. Admittedly, when the Wii U collection came out, I kind of just dove right into Bayonetta 2 since that was the actual new game. I messed around with the original a bit, but didn't play through it again or anything. This time around, though, I'm trying to do the opposite. I want to play through the original and then go through Bayonetta 2, now that I've played them both before. And while clearly Bayonetta 2 is more visually impressive, Bayonetta 1 holds up pretty well for a game that is almost a decade old. I think it came out in 2009, I believe, originally. The lighting choices, I think, have really helped it age a lot better. Like, Bayonetta 2 is very bright and well lit, so everything is very exposed, whereas the original is much more dim and dreary. I think that helps hide a lot more of the imperfections, you know, the not so well-aged textures and such. The game still runs at 60 frames per second, so when in motion, the stuff really doesn't stand out much anyway. And obviously, the gameplay, like 2, is stellar. The boss encounters in particular, again, having not really played it since 2009, I can't believe how awesome some of these fights were, especially when you think about, you know, what other games were offering around this time. Makes it a little bit more shameful, in my opinion, that people didn't support this amazing game during that time, honestly. Like, what were you all thinking? But, you know, again, that's also partly why Nintendo has the exclusivity to this series now, so. Now, with both games, they do run at 720p in both portable mode and docked, and I've heard people raise concerns about what it might look like when docked. Personally, I don't think you're really going to notice the lower resolution much, even on a big TV when the game, again, is in motion when you're playing. But during some of the cutscenes where there's more zoom-ins, specifically the ones that are like still frames with audio just dubbed over them, at those points, you'll probably notice, again, on a bigger display. In portable mode, though, these are simply two of the best games to look at on the Switch to date, in my opinion. The resolution is sharp on the smaller screen, and witnessing all this fast-paced action with next to no slowdown is quite the experience. Digital Foundry did a in-depth breakdown of both games on the Switch, testing their performance compared to past versions of the games, specifically the Bayonetta 1, because there's so many versions of that one. And I do suggest those who want to know more about the frame rate, resolution stuff, go check out those videos. But one of the things that I would highlight that they mentioned that I also really noticed as a major improvement is the load times, specifically in the original, cutting a majority of the total load time out, which is always nice, especially if you find yourself fighting a tough boss or something that keeps killing you. The long load times always feel like salt in the wounds as you keep waiting to get another crack. So it's nice that on the Switch, you know, only a few seconds and you're right back into playing. The amiibo functionality in 2, I also think is pretty cool. This is one of those games that lets you scan your amiibo, well, like, you know, 32 max per day or whatever, for some bonus goodies. I thought it was a cool touch how, like, depending on the amiibo you scan, you got like a message that was like, hey, here's some stuff from your friends in Hyrule or the Mushroom Kingdom. I thought that was cool. The actual Bayonetta amiibo appear to give you a lot of the costumes as well. If you're someone who feels a bit intimidated by action games, even though I don't find these two to be very daunting, honestly, especially if you played on easy. But if you are still a bit worried about that, you know, you're a very casual player, scanning the amiibos will give you a good chunk of halos as well every time. The currency in the game, which will allow you to buy new weapons as well as items that give you unique abilities. So this can be yet another way to give those who feel they need it an even greater advantage. You can really get access to a lot of the higher end items and weapons. And as far as who I'd recommend these games to, you know, for those who aren't really familiar with the series, anyone who wants to experience some of the best, the smoothest, most crisp combat of all time. Simply, when it comes to action games, I mean, answer, who does it better than Platinum? Seriously. Especially once you find your groove, your favorite combos, get the hang of how different enemies attack, and you're zipping around, dodging hits, smacking enemies, and then crushing them with a devastating torture attack or something. It does not get old, I'll tell you that much. And the enemy design in these games, they're really cool. I mean, obviously Bayonetta herself, always great to look at as a nice centerpiece, but, you know, I've said this in the past, I really like the design of the enemies, and there's a good assortment of them with different types of attack. So as you progress and fights start to fill up with different types of enemies, you really have to stay sharp. So yeah, the games are great, they were always great, they're still great, but how about this game as a value? You guys know, those of you who follow me, I'm not a big fan of the ports charging the same price that they did back on the Wii U. I always try to clarify that, you know, I do love the ports, you know, bring them on, especially for the Wii U where, you know, a lot of people didn't own that system. But for the same price as when they were new games, that's where I start to have a problem. But the Bayonetta collection is different for me. As a 2-pack, when Bayonetta 2 was a brand new game, I felt $60 was a total steal. You know, Bayonetta 2 on its own, I feel is worth $60. So now that both games are ports, essentially, I still think this is a solid deal. You know, however you break it down, you know, if you say buy the physical version, $30 for Bayonetta 1, $30 for Bayonetta 2, maybe you want to think of it as $40 for Bayonetta 2 and $20 for the original. However you slice it, the value is still there in my opinion. These games together as a bundle for $60 is worth it. And speaking of that physical version, I should mention before I forget, only Bayonetta 2 is actually on the cart when you buy the physical version. Bayonetta 1 is a digital download, and I've been hearing, this didn't happen to me, so that's why I almost forgot, but there have been people online saying that the codes they're getting for Bayonetta 1 aren't working for some of these physical releases, so do keep that in mind if you do want to go that physical route, that you may have to do some finagling to get your accurate Bayonetta 1 code. It doesn't have any actual impact on the game, but again, for those people going for the physical version, I'd want you to know that up front. Obviously, if you've never played the games before, it's like, what the hell are you waiting for? But even if you did already play through them, I think once you get into playing them in portable mode, you'll get pulled back in. This is what I really knew. First, I was kind of just playing these games. I wanted to capture a video and stuff for this video, but it wasn't really until I sat down that night, I was like curled up in bed and started playing them a little bit in portable mode before I went to sleep, that I was like, wow, I really, I'm glad I have this. Also, if you have friends, the tag climax mode is still sweet. But as with the Wii U version, I assume finding people to play with is going to be hard. But many of you may have friends now who also have a Switch, who, you know, they didn't have a Wii U before. Plus, there's the local option, if you can actually get people in the same room. These are separate little mini levels to play through, by the way. I don't want people thinking you can actually co-op through the game or something like that. But it's still tons of fun, and all of the costumes and weapons are still available for you in this mode, as well as bonus characters that you can unlock along the way. Anyway, with that, I guess I should wrap this. How much gushing do you really need me to do over this? Obviously, if you haven't played them, I highly recommend them. You should go out and grab this to get caught up before that upcoming third game releases. The only way to play this series going forward is probably going to be on Nintendo platforms, simply because, and this was the big story of the Wii U days, Microsoft and Sony, they didn't want to support them. We've all heard it. Platinum said those companies, they basically didn't care. Nintendo offered to fund the series, and that's why they're now a Nintendo exclusive. It's up to us, you know, the consumers, to show the big N they made the right choice here, and support series like this. These are great games. Like I said, I still think at $60, if you buy the collection, it's a solid deal still, and it deserves that support. But yeah, let me know what you think of these games in the comments. Are you playing them again, or for the first time perhaps? Are you pumped for the third game? As always, I'm John Zakari, and thanks for watching.